Russia has committed an act of war against this nation and our form of government. We were attacked last night, as certainly as if they came across the borders, or as if they had bombed polling stations, 40 or more polling stations, 32 Russian-origin bomb threats just in Fulton County, Georgia alone. And what are you going to do about it, President Biden? What are you going to do about it, Merrick Garland? Or are you, Merrick Garland, in another coma? Regardless of the outcome of the presidential election, there is real-time evidence of Russian interference in that election. Russians trying to decide who becomes president, who goes to the Senate, the House, and wins locally. 32 bomb threats identified immediately as coming from Russian email addresses and sources in the most democratic part of Georgia, a quarter of the state's black population, subjected to a terror attack in Fulton and DeKalb counties, and in Pennsylvania, a threat that closed a county elections office for an hour, and at least 10 others statewide of varying degrees, and in Wisconsin, and in Michigan, and in Arizona, at least 10 in Arizona. And back in Georgia, when Georgia extended voting to compensate for the fact that Russian terrorist threats had stopped the voting and caused the evacuation of the polling places, the Republican National Committee went to court to stop the extension of the voting. The Republican National Committee and the Russians on the same side again. It is an act of war. And we know, despite nearly a decade of efforts to bury this truth, that Russian interference means Trump. Trump already admitted at the debate he had talked to Putin after Trump had left office. And now, as Russian interference means Trump, Trump means Elon Musk. And we know Elon Musk has been in contact with Putin for fully 2 years. Remember? The Wall Street Journal, October 24th, quote, Elon Musk, the world's richest man and a linchpin of U.S. space efforts, has been in regular contact with Russian President Vladimir Putin since late 2022. The discussions, confirmed by several current and former U.S., European, and Russian officials, touch on personal topics, business, and geopolitical tensions. In the Journal on October 24th, its sources reported Putin asked Musk to not activate his Starlink satellite internet service over Taiwan as, quote, a favor to the Chinese dictator Xi Jinping. That, the Journal quoted a former Russian intelligence officer as saying, happened late last year. Quoting the article again, later in 2022, Musk was having regular conversations with, quote, high-level Russians, according to a person familiar with the interactions. At the time, there was pressure from the Kremlin on Musk's businesses and, quote, implicit threats against him, the person said. Threats unless he did what? The Journal went on to say that since Musk has, quote, a security clearance that allows him access to certain classified information, his continuing contact with Putin triggered, quote, potential national security concerns among some in the current administration. And the Journal reporters also said that while some in the Biden administration seem to have been aware of Musk's connection to Russia and Putin, maybe most did not. Quote, several White House officials said they weren't aware of them. Were they aware that Musk had taken over goodness knows what? Or for something not happening? Musk took Twitter, swung it into a position in which it was a home for every pro-Russian idiot and bot and every Nazi and every racist and every anti-Semite and every anti-American force that had thumbs. Is Musk going to be arrested, detained, questioned? Are his clearances going to be removed? Is somebody going to send him an email asking him if he knows what happened? Did he have any connection to it? Could he get a message through to Putin? Is Trump going to be arrested, detained, questioned? Anybody connected to Trump? How about a statement from Merrick Garland? Or is that timid, useless, impotent man still working on preventing the copying of music cassettes and 8-track tapes? Trump's Supreme Court has given the president, not him, not anyone in particular, the office of President of the United States, it has given the president blanket immunity, pre-approval to do basically anything he wants and fear no prosecution as long as he can just vaguely prove he did it as part of his official duties. I'm just guessing here, but responding to an attempt unquestionably successful, at least in part, to interfere with the election by a foreign country is unquestionably part of those official presidential duties. Have we ceded control of this country to Russia, President Biden? Does Putin get to shut down polling places and scare off what will be for all time an unmeasurable number of American voters in the places in which, in our history, members of minority groups were shot at and killed for trying to vote? Do the Russians get to shut down polling places now? Act as the KKK? Influence the outcome of elections? In the states that are key to the election? Do they get to make these decisions? Or, it's a quaint notion, do Americans get to make these decisions, President Biden? What are we going to do in response to this? Are we going to turn off Russia's power grid? Are we going to seize Starlink and shut it off where the Russians are using it in Ukraine? Are we going to give Ukraine all of the seized Russian oligarchs' super yachts and other investments in cash? Are we giving Ukraine all it needs to obliterate the entire Russian force inside its country while we still have a country? Are we expelling Russian diplomats? Are we voiding the electoral results in the states the Russians invaded by remote control? Or even thinking about how to correct this? Are we considering doing something more severe? Or are we repeating 2016, where despite overwhelming evidence that Trump got help from Russia to get elected, we just shrugged? We just turned our government over to a bunch of crooks who have proved themselves since, time and time again, manipulated by and instructed by, and shown how to cheat and lie and kill Americans by Vladimir Putin. Are we going to get a statement from this administration? Wait, there was a statement from this administration. I'll quote it in full. The FBI is aware of bomb threats to polling locations in several states, including Georgia, many of which appear to originate from Russian email domains. None of the threats have been determined to be credible thus far. Election integrity is among the FBI's highest priorities. We will continue to work closely with our state and local law enforcement partners to respond to any threats to our elections and to protect our communities as Americans exercise their right to vote. As an aside, I'll note, except for last night. As always, the FBI statement continues, there is no signature, there is no office, there is no name connected to this. It is the FBI as an institution. As always, we urge the public to remain vigilant Again, as an aside, because Merrick Garland does not remain vigilant and reports suspicious activity to state or local law enforcement or submit tips to the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at tips.fbi.gov. How extraordinarily and completely and impotently pathetic. The Russians just shot our democracy in the heart, and those who are there solely to protect that democracy and the citizens of this nation, us, those who are there solely to protect us, have responded to this invasion by proxy by establishing a toll-free tip line.